Hello, everybody, and welcome to No More Mondays, the podcast where we explore the human side of modern work so that you can design the career, the business, and the life that you love. As always, I am your host, Angie Callen, and today's episode is brought to you by none other than Scary Good, Discovering Life Beyond the Sunday Scaries. It is my new book. It is officially out into the world, and it is officially available in hardback form. Hard copy form. I used the term hardback recently, and someone was like, what are you talking about? Hard copy form. If you are ready to examine whether or not you are living and working intentionally, it is definitely worth picking up. Head on over to Scary Good Read and grab a copy and leave me a review because we're still trying to do that thing. Once you launch a book, you're always launching a book. But in the meantime, we have an amazing conversation to have today with Elizabeth Eiss. She is the founder of Results Resourcing, which is a freelance platform built for solopreneurs and small businesses who want to scale intelligently and with fractional talent. Elizabeth has been a C-suite, she's been a startup leader, and now she runs this company that has essentially been preparing the world for this very future of work we are now experiencing. And she's got some pretty great insights to show to talk about with how we use our time, where we should be investing instead of just spending, and how outsourcing actually may give us freedom, not just efficiency. Elizabeth, welcome to No More Mondays.
Thank you. What a great introduction. You really set the stage.
Thank you. I try to do that. My 8 years of resume writing can't allow me to not have a great preamble into who we are talking about. And I'm excited about this because for those of you, behind the scenes, Elizabeth and I have had some very, very great conversations about business and fractional work and just kind of all the things. And so where I want to start is this idea about how and where we invest in our time and the difference between how that might be when it comes to scaling versus the good old solopreneurial spin. And that's a really important reframe as we start to figure out kind of how we want to grow. Because especially in the solopreneurial world, we're really good about doing everything and doing everything very, very proudly instead of delegating. And so I'm curious for you, where'd the mindset shift come from? And what's your personal experience in this idea of intelligent scaling the way you want to do it?
Well, that's a great place to start because I really think at the end of the day, whether you're seeking work-life balance or you're deciding to leave corporate job and start something else or just leave a job, period. I mean, there's always work you like to do and things you don't like to do. And to me, it comes down to understanding the value of time. And in fact, there's so much out there about how do you decide what work to do. But to me, it's very simple because I think there's a vast difference between investing your time and spending your time. Now, people use those phrases interchangeably, but to me, they're not the same thing. Investing your time is really things that you're doing the work that is going to generate value. Either within a corporation or with a client, generate revenue, those sorts of things. And anything that is not that is non-core work. And that's what you spend your time on because you really are spending every hour doing that work that is not generating return or impact for you. So I think that those two words are extremely critical. And if people start thinking that way, they can make more intelligent choices about what work they should do and what work they should not do and find ways to have other people do that work for them or not do it at all by changing careers or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. This to me has a direct correlation to a phrase we hear in entrepreneurship a lot, which is working in your business versus working on your business. And the thing is, I get them confused. I'm like, wait, which one is which? And I think we could very easily replace in with spend and on with invest.
Correct. It's that simple. You don't need, fancy books, fancy methodologies. It can be that simple. It's just on a piece of paper. What do I invest my time in to grow my impact, grow my business, whatever it is. And that's working on the business. And then anything else is kind of in the business or the non-core work. Now, sometimes there's work that floats back and forth. I mean, it's like if you're crafting, doing a new marketing strategy or something like that, and you're drafting, a new article or something like that. I mean,
Mhm.
that is doing work, but it's under the guise of, and you're investing your time and your brain power in producing something that's can be leveraged, for greater impact.
I think it's about what the work will do, right?
Hmm.
And that's where and in work, spending work is not important. It's a question of who needs to be doing it, which brings me to a very important question. We're going to bring up the ugly word delegate because solopreneurs don't like to do it because we think that we need to be doing everything. But I'm actually even going to say leaders in a company. This is a big challenge: is not only what to delegate, how to delegate, and how to actually give autonomy around it. And so, what's your experience in actually, enabling people to do that, right? So like what's a mindset shift a leader needs to have out there in order to like start letting go so they can delegate and so they can give someone else the time to spend?
Well, at the end of the day, there's just finite time in every day. You can't do everything. And there is a bit of a mindset that, oh, I'm going to do it the best. And so I understand that. But at the end of the day, it kind of goes back to, how do you have more impact? You just can't keep doing things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to stay a solopreneur, I mean, I guess two camps. One, if you're an employee in a company, that's one thing. But if you're on your own in your own business, which is really where I spend most of my time these days, really working with entrepreneurs, you can kind of set the stage. You can do the work on the business step of framing the work that needs to be done. But is it the best use of your time? I mean,
Yeah.
we have a study, a little tool we use called the ROI of time calculator. And it's basically, it starts by asking the person who takes the survey, what's an hour of your time worth? Well, no one ever says $10. Never. I mean, the average is almost 180. And then we ask them, well, how many hours a week you work? And the average is 57. And then we ask them, well, what percent of your time do you work on growing your business, working on your business, working with clients? Sadly, it's 43%. Of all the people that have ever taken it, 43% of people's time is spent on the core work of their business, which generates revenue. That means 57% is work on that someone else could do, which will free you up to spend more time on the stuff you love and that will grow your business. It's really going back to the value of time idea that's the motivator. Because if you keep doing all this stuff and you think about the value of time, then you're basically cost per hour, your rate per hour just plummets, because you're doing something that someone else could do for you, if it's data entry or, even learning about new tools out there. Somebody else is already super experienced at that and probably better at it than you are. And, asking ChatGPT or Google, how do I, is not going to be the path to success, because it's going to take you more time and you're only going to uncover the superficial, of whatever question you're asking, as opposed to embracing someone that has expertise in the area and have them teach you. And the other thing I would say, in terms of delegation, it's a scary word for people, but I think that's because people look at it as a zero-sum game. If you start making the list of stuff you don't like to do or aren't good at, and you just chisel away at it, do low-risk things with somebody first. Get your confidence, get your process down, how you're going to communicate, how you're going to document the process, those kinds of things. It makes it less scary. And it's not like you're making this huge leap. It's like you're asking your kid to go to the grocery store for you. It's like, okay, you give them a list, they go to the grocery store and they come back and it was a success for everybody. And then you move on from that. I mean, it really can be that simple. It doesn't have to be some huge, scary thing.
Well, and that leaves off with something that there's like 6 points I want to actually make sure we call out in there. However, one of the biggest ones, I love that you left off with the kid going to the grocery store, because the kid might go to the grocery store and if there's apples on the list, bring home green apples instead of red apples, but the kid still brought home apples. And the important thing to think about there is when delegating, different does not mean wrong. And this brings up like PTSD for me, because when I was a young engineer, engineers are, sorry, calling you all out there, are famous micromanagers because most of them do better at technical skills than human and leadership skills. And so they default to their natural disposition. And I still remember, this is like seared in my brain. I remember I can vision it right now, sitting at my cubicle, doing something in AutoCAD with my VP level manager behind me, telling me how to draw a line in AutoCAD. And I'm like, homeboy, there's like 6 different commands to draw the line that we want. Just because I don't use the command you use does not mean I'm not going to generate the output that we want. And so I think when delegating, you've really got to let go of how is it done is different than is it done to standard or to value or to outcome that we need. And that's to me really important with like in a little bit of like the letting go.
No, I would agree with you. And in fact, my philosophy on delegation is actually a 3-part philosophy. And that doesn't make it complicated. Basically, people think about delegating as in delegating to people, which is the most common thing. And that's historically what people have always had to do. Mm-hmm. But I actually think delegation, I call it the delegation engine. I have a talk on it, and I write a lot about the delegation engine. And to me, it's a methodology, and it starts with process. After process comes tools, and only after process and tools comes people. Yep. So it has to be in that order, because as you said, with the apple example, if red apples are important, then that needs to be on the grocery list. Don't buy green apples, buy red apples. And that's process. You're making a list and you're being specific about what the outcome is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And so to me, delegation is really about documenting your process, even if it's just your high level, most important processes, because frankly, that's a business asset. I mean, if you ever want to sell your business, you need to have documented process. You need a standard way of doing things. And then if you want to delegate, handing off a process that's well defined ensures success. A lot of people get burned delegating because they have not bothered to put the process together, and they don't understand why someone else draws a line in AutoCAD differently than you did. You know, it's just it's so basic, but people don't think twice about drawing out shopping lists and things like that. But they get cold feet when it comes to work, and I feel the same way about tools, particularly with the AI today. And there's so many wonderful tools out there: CRM systems, mail systems, email, all kinds of things that tools can do so much for you. But what I find repeatedly, particularly with entrepreneurs, is they buy a tool that somebody tells them to buy. They don't buy the one that's necessarily right for their process. Yeah. So they retrofit process to fit the tool, which doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't work.
And then so many people aren't particularly technical, and a lot of these tools are quite technical. So they get it set up, but they've never optimized the systems. And I see this a lot with CRMs in particular. They get it to do the basic things, like basically be their Rolodex, but they've never figured out how to do an automation or to, send reminders. And there's so much, but you don't need to learn to do that. You just need to find somebody that is good at that CRM system and use them to either teach you or to do the stuff you is probably bad use of your time anyway, would be spending time. And then really, to me, the optimum is you exercise those two steps, and then you outsource everything else, because quality people are more expensive than process and tools.
Yes. And if you don't align all those things, you will be frustrated by outsourcing things, and the delegation will fall apart because you haven't set up an ecosystem to make it successful. So there is mindset there, and there's logistics there. And you bring up a really good point that I had thought of earlier in your like nugget filled response to delegation, which is, we've got ChatGPT, we've got generative AI that gives us the illusion that it has emboldened we humans to thinking we can be experts in just about everything or anything, which gets us into this trap of, half using or half realizing the ROI of a system because you're using AI to kind of fill an expertise gap. And my general rule of thumb there is, if you would not go in there and try to figure it out on your own before ChatGPT existed, then just don't do it. Which brings us to a really good point in this conversation. We know the future of work is heavily impacted, and a ton of the conversation is around technology and AI. And I think it's very important for our relevance as human to understand how we can adopt it. But I also think that this talent model of like fractional gig or specialized work that you specialize in is right alongside it as a coming trend. And you just happen to be ahead of it because you've been working in it for so long. And so I want to hear a little bit more about what you're seeing on the how are we working as the future begins to be disrupted by technology? What is this trend around kind of fractional work? What does it tell us about how we want to work in the future?
Well, that's a great way to ask the question, and I really like all the different AI options that we have out there, and they're good at different things. But we need to bear in mind that the landscape on AI is changing constantly.
Yeah,
and there's control issues and all kinds of things, and it hallucinates, and every model's not the same. So which one do you use? I mean, there's just a whole host of decisions to make. But I use it a lot. Just so. Tell me about this, tell me about that, or give me the data on this. So I think it's excellent, but it's a tool. It's different from a CRM, but it is a tool.
Yep.
And so what I've discovered about a year ago, actually, when AI really started to come to the forefront, is I went to ChatGPT and I said, tell me the trends for virtual assistants. And what I got back was digital virtual assistants, Siri, Alexa, not humans. So I mean, back to the red or green apple, I had to revise my question, my prompt, to tell me about human virtual assistants, and then it gave me all kinds of data about that. But increasingly, AI is your assistant. It can do a whole lot of stuff for you, and that's a great way to outsource processing to that tool. But I think the important thing to recognize are the limitations. And in some of my talks, I have a graph where I really talk about virtual assistants. I believe it's a professional service. It's not just somebody you hand off to your neighbor or your kid. I mean, they're informed professionals if they're really good at providing virtual assistance in the broadest professional sense of the word. But on the on the left-hand side, got my directions wrong. On the left-hand side of the kind of the graph is our task-oriented things, which AI is great at, data, analytics, stuff like that. And in the old days, that was really good for lower end virtual assistants all over the world, play well in that world. On the far right-hand side is outcomes-based work. And yes, AI will deliver an outcome, but unless you ask it to analyze or challenge or whatever it might be, or give me all the alternative points of view, just asking it a question doesn't mean you got the right answer. And so I'm really, frankly, an advocate of a hybrid model. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Yes.
And the human is going to challenge you, is going to do a reasonable test, is going to be an accurate, authentic voice of your brand. So I think there's just a lot of reasons to think about how do you do both. Yeah. And frankly, just like other tools, I mean, again, my world is virtual assistants, but the best virtual assistants today really understand how to use AI. It's not that they're substituting their thought process for AI, but they're using it to save everybody time and access a greater database. Then they will take that work and work it, to give a good product, for the client. So to me, it's really a combination of the two. And the one other thing I'll mention, and this is probably more specific to entrepreneurs, but there's so many solo tools out there. But if you're going to run a business, the tools have to talk. They have to work together. And so it's not just picking an AI tool or another AI tool. It's how do they work with your processes, and how are they going to communicate with one another? Otherwise, you're just creating solo tools that create more work in other ways.
Yeah. Or they become expensive because you're paying for 9,000 zaps in order to get them to connect with each other. But there's a really good point here that I think goes back to the beginning of our conversation, which is if you're going to delegate, the best way to delegate is to have the process already designed, find the right systems, and then you bring the right human in to connect those dots. The exact same thing is the fact for AI, right? It is, AI, all of these tools work best if you've already got your process in place, because then you figure out the best way to augment it. And is it an agentic support or is it a human support? And I have to tell you that you don't already know this, but you just like totally, you got me on something, because this past fall, I went to an AI marketing conference, and I was the one in the room and on the stage talk about how to be a human, which is always an interesting place to be when you've got people talking about how to AI arbitrage a business and set it up and start making money tomorrow, even though you don't know about it, and creating your video clone so you can have 3 million followers on YouTube. And I'm sitting here going, and I'm going to go up there and talk about how to be a human. But guess what I talked about, Elizabeth? It was the fact that this whole thing is not about man versus machine, or even man or machine. It really is man and machine. And we both have to have a seat at the table. And we as the human are still the ones driving it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important distinction as we think about how, just ever changing technologies of all types, just becomes ever more omnipresent in our lives and our businesses. And all of that rolls back to what I think is this theme of it, like intentional delegation.
Yeah. Totally agree with you.
So, so on that note, here's a challenge question to get everybody out there thinking. What is a sign or an indicator that we need to stop spending time in places and start investing it in growth? What's a red flag that we've got it backwards?
Well, I think that when I think about all the clients that come to us, almost all of them have a growth problem. They may have other needs too, but everything they're looking for is to help them grow their business. So I think that the first clue is, if the business isn't producing, either the production or the profit that you're looking for, that would be sign number one. Sign number two, that you need to rethink, how you're investing or spending your time, your use of that, in that case, use of time. And then I think the next one really is about, I know when I end up doing things that I dread, I know that, okay, there must be some better way. I don't like doing it, so I shouldn't be doing it. And sometimes you have to do something in the beginning, but when you get that feeling like, oh God, I've got to do that, that's going to be a sign that that's probably something to think about. And, some things are more complicated to delegate than others, but I think people can start just making a little list of if they, on their week, how do they feel that week? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And what are the things they felt really advanced their businesses, or the clients said to them, oh, that really was helpful to me, or whatever. Those are the things that kind of go on that core business list. And, and then you're going to get those gut feelings about the things that you just dread doing or are a problem. And sometimes it's a technical problem that, you're struggling to solve because, you just don't understand coding or how a tool works or whatever. Those are all things. And in between are the things you love to do that still might be spending time. And I have grace for that. It's like, it's okay. Just recognize that that's probably not the best use of your time, but you enjoy it. And at the end of the day, we want impact and we want to have fun at whatever we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and to me, a lot of that comes back to kind of your energy spends and energy investment, right? If you want to have a little fun, everybody out there, go Google the Eisenhower matrix and go put all of your things in the quadrants, because you will find that there are things that are like high impact, but become low energy, like low energy or energy deficit. That is primetime delegation right there. But there are going to be things that have, like, let's say, low impact, but high energy gain for you, either as a leader or an entrepreneur. And those are the kinds of things you want to think about, keeping, because there is a net positive, but you've got to keep it in check and not get sucked into only doing that, because then still the investment work isn't necessarily going to happen. And this is, I think, what is so cool about the snapshot in time we are in right now, and our ability to essentially redefine and define the way that we work, and kind of what we want success in our little, corner of the world to look like.
I love the Eisenhower matrix. I mean, I think that's just a very simple tool that, no judgment, just fill it out. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it'll give you a start, just give you a start.
I actually did Terry and I do it? I think Terry and I did it. But I had done it with another client who had a business before. And I was like, it's just so helpful to it's visual, and it's 4 compartments that just help you go, okay, this is where this sits in my world. And, this is a super, super tactical little tidbit that I'm going to roll way back up to the 30,000 foot view, because in my mind, this is the stuff that helps us work the way we want, right? We want to have work, jobs, and businesses that complement life, not compete with it. And some of that comes down to how we manage the energy in order to find the equilibrium. I am intentionally not using the word balance. And I think that this moment that we're in time allows us to kind of rewrite some of these rules. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I wrote my book, Shameless Plug, is because I started rewriting the rules, I think, before we were allowed, right? And for you, Elizabeth, I think that you've kind of done a little bit of the same, right? You've had lean businesses, agile businesses, but all of it's been really human first. And I'm curious what some of your takeaways or perspectives or even philosophies are when it comes to, success on our terms.
Well, I think, what I always think about is I don't want to be a commodity, and I think that, all of these tools, unless they're really customized, become a commodity. And so I think that I am human first. And in terms of how I started this business, I actually never intended to be in this business. I'd spent years running very large businesses as a very senior executive in the insurance industry. And 24 years ago, I up and joined a startup. And I was just tired of being an insurance exec, because you do get pigeonholed, like, oh, she can lead these things, but only in the insurance industry. Well, I didn't think so. So I joined this startup, and it didn't succeed, for a variety of reasons, but it was just so fun, to be part of the startup. But that's really what got me when I started to consult, which I don't consider myself a consultant, but I did consult for a while. That's when I started to hire freelancers. And this was 15 years ago, when people thought freelancers were losers that couldn't get real jobs. I mean, I hate to say it, but I had to explain to people, no, these are professionals that, like an attorney or a CPA. You don't think those people, those are contract workers. So I really had a lot of conversation around that. And I was essentially a contract worker, and I hadn't really thought about that, but I definitely, many entrepreneurs are contract workers. And I started to find talent from the plethora of freelance platforms that are out there. And what I discovered is I was really good at it because of my corporate background. And I would work with smaller clients that really struggled with those platforms because there was no human. I mean, if you go to Upwork, and that's the biggest platform out there, and they do a brilliant job in so many areas. But for a solopreneur that doesn't know how to delegate, doesn't know how to create a job profile, they type something into a box and they get 5,000 profiles back and limited ability to screen. And I started to do it for my clients. And that's what really got me onto this idea, like, oh, I'm a matchmaker. I know how to find, vet, and curate freelance talent and match them to the client's needs. I take that whole step out of the process. So that's what led me to ultimately building a technology platform that keeps the human first.
Yay. Humans still matter, everybody.
Yeah.
Humans
I mean, it's
still
like
matter.
Technology does the stuff I don't want to do, or I can't do at scale, but it still allows me to have human conversations like we're having today with people that need to hire freelancers and don't know where to start. Well, that's what we do. We help them start, and then we will match them with teams that we've pre-vetted in the United States and Canada, because freelancers are not commodities. They're super smart people all over the world that speak and write English well, but that doesn't mean they necessarily understand the culture of where you work, you live and work, or the differences between this state and that state. So, and the human really can cut through all that and really, help zero in on the impact that you want to have.
I think it's a really good observation to say that, a freelance graphic designer is no different than a CPA, right? That in fundamentals, and a lot of it, I think, comes down to the mentality that both we have as people engaging those specialized, contract or consultant type places, but also I think freelancers have an opportunity to rethink their mentality kind of around, how they work and the specialties and the value that they bring. So if that's you out there, there's our little tidbit for you. And ultimately, what I love so much about this conversation is I love humans and I love technology. I am a former engineer who loves people, and so I really like to think about all of this, whether it's us as business owners or engaging in delegating and bringing in VAs, as being AI enabled humans on purpose.
Right.
Right. And that means we're still purposeful humans. Purpose has many connotations in that statement. But unless you are, I don't know, 3 years from retirement, you can't afford to not be AI enabled because it ain't going anywhere.
Right.
However, we also can't just be automated entirely. And that's why we still have to remain humans on purpose. And so this has been a very fun conversation to remind everybody out there of that. And if you're looking to maybe work smarter, maybe buy back some time, maybe invest instead of spend on your business, Elizabeth may just be your ticket. So how does everybody out there get in touch with you and follow along with what is clearly good wisdom on how to work smarter and with a higher level of investment? How do we find you?
Well, a couple of ways. Our website is called Results Resourcing, and it's named that deliberately because that's what we want to do. We want to resource results. We're not interested in doing tasks, which we do, but we want to help you have the impact you want. That's the human first, and that's really what we're all about. So our website is Results Resourcing, and it's .net or .com, either way. Also find me on LinkedIn under Elizabeth Eiss, which I'm sure will be in the show notes. Plus, you can see how my name is spelled there. And just real quickly, and we do, for people who are looking for freelancers, we do have a free job consult. We call it a jumpstart call. Because, if you walk away knowing more about your options and how to prioritize working in your business versus on your business, then I feel that's a win. And ultimately, we can help you do that with talent. But I want to go back to really quickly to something you said about we want to help owners of businesses be the CEO, stepping out of the doer role into the CEO role. And ultimately, we want to help freelancers move from being just a contractor to being a professional. Yeah. And so I will also mention that we have built some courses that will help people who want to be a virtual assistant professional. And so those are also tools that we offer. And it's called a VA Hub, which will teach people how to, if you really want to be a virtual assistant, which is a professional service, these are tools which will help you up your game. So you'd be a better virtual assistant and more successful with your clients.
And we will share all of those links here in the LinkedIn chat and on the show notes. So if you're listening out in podcast land, you can check out Elizabeth and there's great resources, not only directly, but almost like indirectly. And I even love some of the things you mentioned throughout the conversation around, just starting to help people explore work delegation from like, okay, wait, am I actually costing myself money by doing this myself because I'm spending time I could be spending in a much higher rate of pay and things like that? And so head on over to Results Resourcing and check it all out. Again, we'll share it in show notes. And as we wrap things up, I have a very important question, Elizabeth, that I feel like I love asking you more than I've asked anyone because of the human undercurrent in our conversation. And that is, what do you think is the single most important thing humans should be doing right now in order to stay relevant and to thrive in the future of work?
Oh, wow. I think it boils down to having purpose. Because I think if you're grounded in a purpose, whatever that is for you, then that's going to help you choose the right path. So I think that's it.
I'm a big fan of purpose, and that just thank you for, I didn't pay you to reinforce the being AI enabled human on purpose, because if you know why you're doing something, it becomes infinitely easier to continue doing it in the right way, get through challenges and remember that humans still matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think purpose ends up helping you answer the questions. Because if you always go back to your purpose, it's like, yes, it'll kind of self-direct you.
Yes. And if you need to lean into, you again did not pay Elizabeth to cue up perfectly the fact that if you are interested in reading a little bit more, getting some inspiration on purpose, I happen to have a book called Scary Good, Discovering Life Beyond the Sunday Scaries, which is essentially all about this idea of being a human on purpose, knowing what that purpose is, and really integrating life and work so that you can impact and live a values aligned life. And so I will just remind you that you can get it at scaryreadgood.com. It is a very human read, I promise. But I will wrap up the final shameless plug that I hadn't planned on doing, but the opportunity was so ripe I couldn't help myself with saying, Elizabeth, thank you a million times over for being here and being part of the No More Mondays movement and helping all of us think differently about how we spend versus invest our time. And most importantly, thank you for also agreeing that we can all be AI-enabled humans on purpose.
Well, thank you so much. This is really fun to be on No More Mondays. So thank you so much.
Thank you again. Check out Elizabeth, everything she has to offer. You got to love a live show with a guest from New York that ends with ambulances and sirens in the background. You get nothing but authenticity here at No More Mondays.
I didn't even hear it, which is typical of a New Yorker, you know?
Yeah. Whereas I'm in my little mountain hole and it's like, oh, a siren. You know, for all of you out there, if Elizabeth or I can help you to figure out how to delegate or figure out how to be a purposeful human, we are here for you. Find both of us on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening to this episode of No More Mondays, and I will see you all next week for our next conversation.